The topic today is a very intriguing topic, love and self-realization. I wouldn't have thought of a topic like this myself. So again, it is only like you youngsters who can come up and say, how can we link sadhana of love to self-realization? But once it's out there, it seems very simple and clear that love is not simply some kind of emotional feeling that you have for somebody else out there. It begins like that. It's a good idea to begin like that. You love your parents. You love as you come into this world. As a child, you cling to your mother and then your dad, perhaps. And then you begin to love your siblings. Perhaps not so much when you grow up, but doesn't matter. It's still part of love. And then you make more friends. You love them as friends. And that capacity to love begins to slowly widen. And so in Bhagwan's teachings, when I was your age, some of you, and I was 17 when I came to him, one of the things that struck me most was his quote on love is God, God is love. I kind of related to that, though I didn't understand the entirety of it. I'm still trying to grasp it. But it appealed to me. I liked the idea that God, the idea of God, the concept of God, God himself or herself, however we want to view it, is something we can relate through love. Love is understandable by all of us. There is no one definition of love. There is no one particular understanding of love. There is no dogmatism around love. And yet it is personal to all of us, and yet it is universal in nature. That is the beauty of that. And I think you all have made a wonderful link between that and self-realization. So we'll try and understand that, how that love for that starts with things that belong to me, people that belong to me, slowly begins to widen and begins to spread out and embrace people that don't belong to me, things that don't belong to me, and I began to embrace other ideologies, other cultures, people across the world. And this international organization is a perfect example. All of you from different parts of the world are, of course, you all are sharing a virtual space, but nevertheless, you're connecting heart to heart. What better example can it be than this? So this kind of expansion, capacity to expand love, eventually ends in understanding, wait a minute, I'm just not only this. There must be something more in me that's able to connect to somebody thousands of miles away. And I'm not talking just of technology and Zoom and Google and things like that, but it's more than that, right? You understand what I'm saying, I hope. It is the commonness of purpose. It is the commonness of ideologies. It is the ability to communicate. It is the openness, the honesty, the integrity. All that comes from that heart-to-heart communication based on love. And so our understanding of ourselves begin to get better as we are in this path. And that opens doors to what we call, quote unquote, self-realization. I know it's a big term, right? When it's thrown at us, we said, all right, someday it'll happen, and we push it away. For many of us, we kind of push it away thinking, it's after death. It's not so. The concept of self-realization was given to us by our beloved Bhagwan. When he said, start saying, I am God, I am God, I am not different from God. He didn't say, I will become God. He didn't tell us to say, I will become God, I will become God. He said, I am. Start saying, I am. Why? Because there is a part of us that we have forgotten. So in that context, I want to revisit this concept. Like I did visit in the morning, and I urge you to look at that as well, because though it'll be similar, I kind of may miss something that I talked about in the morning, and I kind of emphasize on something else now. It kind of, it perhaps will help. Anyway, what is self-realization? As I mentioned in the morning, Bhagavan gives a very simple and yet a very powerful definition of this. The Sanskrit term for this is Prajnanam Brahma. In his own words, Prajnanam Brahma, the knowledge of Brahma. Brahma means infinity. There's no way we can comprehend or define what it is or understand what it is with a limited mind. It'll be like taking an elephant and trying to stuff it into a bottle. It's impossible. Our mind is like the bottle and Brahman is like the elephant. You cannot bring the elephant into the bottle. The bottle has to break, and yet it will not be able to contain the elephant, right? Because there's no bottle now to contain the elephant. That is the kind of understanding. So anyway, we'll come to that in a few seconds. How do we understand this? There is a constancy involved in an awareness, and there is a quality involved which is integrated. The constancy is the fundamental thing. Whatever this awareness is, and we'll come to that. When we add the quality, we'll get a better idea of what that awareness is. But whatever that is, has to be constant. It is not a one-time achievement, it has to be constant. It is not an experience that I had 10 years ago, but it is a state of being that I experience constantly. Bhagavan talks about how butter is easy to melt, but nevertheless, even that needs a flame that is constantly lit. Even if it's for 30 seconds or a minute, it has to be constant, right? So anything, any experiences that we get in bits and spurts, any insights that we get into bits and spurts about this awareness that we talk about, which we do actually, all of us do get these kind of the highs, if you will, the flash, if you will, the intuitive breakthroughs that you get either in your work or in your art or whatever it is. There are moments, there are aha moments, many such moments that you have in your life that you can relate to, and those are moments where suddenly, for the lack of any other words, it's like a direct opening to a source that suddenly downloads the information that you want in a very mystical, magical manner. There's no logic to explain how intuition happens, right? We call it gut feeling sometimes. So it comes in bits and spurts, that awareness, but it's not constant. So self-realization is the fundamental quality here, is constant. And then there is an awareness. There is a constant awareness. Okay, it's not a one-time thing. It's a constant awareness. What kind of awareness is that? Now, how do we approach this? I'm trying to think of another analogy, so bear with me. Now, if you go, let's say, to a new place and you want to make new friends, and you see a bunch of youngsters there, and you say, "Hey, hi, how are you doing?" And they say, "Hi, I'm Mike," and you give your hands and you say, "Nice to meet you, Mike." And somebody else says, "I'm Joanne." You say, "Hi, nice to meet you, Joanne." Somebody says, "I'm Josh." "Hey, nice to meet you, Josh." And you just say, "Hi, Ram, nice to meet you, Ram." And you shake hands with everyone, and they are like, "Wait a minute, who are you again?" They're not asking, but they're expecting you to introduce yourself. But you don't say anything. And they say, "Oh, and they ask you, "Where do you come from? You live in the neighborhood?" And you're like, "So what's up? What's the weather like? I mean, what are you guys up to?" They would immediately kind of have a mental block. Why? Because you have neither introduced yourself and told your name, and neither have you told where you come from. And so one of them steps out and asks you, "Wait a minute, you have a name, right? What's your name?" And then you tell them, "Oh, that doesn't matter. I mean, you can call me anything you want. I really don't care. Honestly, I don't know." And then they say, "Okay, do you live somewhere here? Do you know your way back home? Or do you live in this neighborhood?" You're like, "Nah, I don't know. I'll figure it out. But right now, hey, what's happening? What are you doing?" And so you see how this is going, right? This seems like a weird guy right in the midst, who doesn't know his name or doesn't want to tell us his name, doesn't know where his home is or doesn't care where he's come from, where he's going. He just seems to be like one of those somebody who's completely lost or somebody who's not sane. And so everybody excuses themselves and disappear from the scene. It seems logical. And that's what you would do. That's what I would do if somebody I were to meet who will do that. But guess what? You and I and all of us, of course there are exceptions. There could be exceptions in this group. There are many, many exceptions of some of us who know the answers. But most of us, what we do is we live through our life without knowing who we are. We just assume it's normal. We don't know where we came from. We really don't know what the purpose of our birth is, what the purpose of our existence is. We don't know after death where we are going, or do we go anywhere at all. And there's a part of us that's constantly redefining who I think I am, because when I was a child I thought I am something, then I began to grow and I'm redefining myself so that I in me has not got a complete definition. That means there is scope for growth, there's scope for understanding, and yet without understanding the I in me, I've begun to live a life. And then I say, I like this, I don't like this, I find this is right and that is wrong, and this is what God is and that is what not God is, and this is science and that is spirit. And I have begun to cast my judgments, I have begun to share my wisdom, express my wisdom, I begin to live my life, I want to choose careers, I want to do this, I want to do that. Somebody stops you, somebody like Sai, and says, ask, who are you? Before you say, I want to do this and that, do you know who you are? And you would say, I don't know, I don't believe in all that, I don't care. It sounds foolish, right? That's what the awareness is. Awareness is the fundamental thing. There is a very great part of us that we are not aware of. We haven't even tapped into that. We are born into a family, right? And a name was dumped upon us. Not that it's bad, but I'm just giving you a different kind of a picture. A name was dumped upon us. Hey, you're going to be called Twinkie or some name. All right, let's call it Ram. Ram, you're going to call you Ram. Okay, I accepted the name because it is just given to me. Who are you? I am Ram. Are you really Ram? I don't know. I mean, I've been called Ram since I was born. And so a name was given to me. And then as I grew up, a language was taught to me. I adopted that language. I said okay to the name. I said okay to because I didn't have a choice. And then as my brain was filled with the kind of education that you and I we lean on and say this is what I've learned. A for apple we were taught, B for bat we were taught, 2 + 2 is 4 we were taught. And this is right, this is wrong, this is where you have to laugh, this is where you have to cry, this is how you sit, this is how you eat, this is how you sleep. And we just took all of that in. And by the time we are 5 or 7, everybody's cheering because we are all part of that mainstream, if you will. Now, where was in the 7 years of your life, first 7 years, and 5 more years, let's make it 12 till you entered your teenage, where was a chance given to you to discover who you were? What was the nature of your birth? What was the purpose of your existence? These things are not done these days. It was done at one point. Every family was endowed with that kind of wisdom many thousands of years ago. So now it's almost mythical. So let's leave that aside. We won't go back to an era where we can just keep debating forever without really knowing that part. But today it doesn't happen. So what happens is we begin to live our lives. When we are 20, we are very sure of what we want to do and we go ahead and chase that. And when we are 60 and 70, we begin to regret many things when we look back and say, I wish I had a chance to relive life all over again. Why does that happen? It's because of that lack of awareness, which was the fundamental part, should have been the fundamental part of education. The practice of teaching the Gayatri mantra at a younger age in a civilization that now is restricted. That civilization was universal again thousands of years ago. It wasn't restricted to a culture or a country, but today it's restricted to being a religious practice in India. Nevertheless, that kind of practice was done to a young child, 6-year-old, 7-year-old, 8-year-old. And what was that? What was that child initiated into? That begin to ask who I am. Open your mind. Draw energy from the very source of this universe. Tat savitur varenyam. Dhiyo yona prachodayat. Illumine your mind. Do we learn that in schools today? No. We get graded because we said A for apple, apple, and B for bat. And we get graded and we pat ourselves on the back. Everybody pats us on our back and we carry on. It is a blessing to be in the umbrella of Sai. It is a blessing to have a guru who wakes you up from that stupor, if you will, that slumber that we are all in as a generation and generations together. We can blame the Mongols who invaded India and destroyed the culture. We can blame the Mughals and who destroyed our culture. We can blame the English and the Britishers, and we can create a picture of victimization for ourselves, that civilization that kind of disappeared fast. That's all in the past. Now we have a chance because we have teachers like Sai who awaken us back to that glorious nature that lies hidden within you and within me and within all of us. Have we had a chance to explore that? And if we have not had a chance, why not take that chance right now, here and now? And why are you postponing it? How can you go about living a life assuming you're something only to realize that that something you assumed was a tiny, tiny, tiny bit fraction of something so huge? It's like having $1 million in the bank and you spent your entire life drawing just $1,000 a month to earn your livelihood, or maybe even less, right? It sounds ridiculous. Why would I live in that poverty, and why would I live in that miserliness if only I had known there was this kind of money available to me? All I had to do was write a check and draw. We didn't know that. We didn't know. We don't know even to this day. And that's why that awareness comes. Even though in this statement here, or in this quote here, constant integrate awareness is the last, it's perhaps the most important. An awareness that we are integrated. That I am not limited to what I look. I am not limited to my physicality. I am limited by nothing. Nothing limits me. My capacity is not limited by anything except by my thinking. My capacity, my ability to do something, ability to acquire something, the power in me to architect, to be the architect of my life lies entirely with me. I am not a victim of circumstances. I design the circumstances. I invoke people in my life. I invoke circumstances in my life. Do we work from that standpoint? We don't, right? It is because we lack this understanding. So let's go into this further. Before we go there, now what I spoke to you, does it sound like a religious dogmatic preaching? I hope it didn't. Self-realization is not the whole concept, the idea of knowing who you are. It's just common sense. Because that's what the rishis and the sages did. This is what I believe. That they looked at the stars, they looked at the changing seasons thousands of years ago and said, I must be a part of this, right? This universe is not different from me, I'm not isolated from Mother Nature. And so they began to understand their link between themselves and Mother Nature, and that led to a great understanding. That was the education. The education of the self was given primary importance to a young child. All the gurukulas, all the schools of ancient India and perhaps China and Tibet and all those places, they all was part of one big culture, I would think. They all believed in understanding the self. Even here in this Western Hemisphere, you have the American Indians and so on. So all across the world, there was a time when mankind in general was very tuned into nature, trying to just to decipher this cosmic code of who they were, what the purpose was in their lives. And so it was not a product of religion. It is what we call spirituality. Religion is a college that gives you fundamental ideas, but then you graduate out of that into the world of the spirit, where you begin to apply those teachings freely, fearlessly, not bound by anything except by your understanding. So it's not a product of the religion, of any religion. In fact, every religion ultimately ends in this concept of self-realization, though they don't call it this way. The Christianity, the New Testament, Jesus talks about the kingdom of heaven within. So that's what it is. It is self-realization. So, and that's like that. And in Quran, I have a friend, Faiz Muhammad in Trinidad, who explained to me, Quran talks about Allah being closer than the vein, jugular vein, I guess, closer than this vein, in the sense that Godhead, that infinite Allah, is within you. What is that? That is self-realization. So there are different ways of explaining, but they all come back to the same concept. Now, is it a journey? Is it a destination? As I explained in the previous session as well, we think of self-realization, many of us perhaps could think of it as a goal to achieve in life. Hey, what about self-realization? Oh, someday I'm going to realize who I am. But right now I have important things to do. We say I have career, I have education, I have to do this and that. Again, we are making all these decisions without tapping into that fundamental knowledge of, hey, wait a minute, who am I? Without that understanding, how can I even get out into this world? But we do. You do, I do. We all have done this. Why? Because we'll come to that. Because we follow everyone else. So you guys are doing, there must be some meaning. I'll also do it blindly. Sheep mentality. The masses. We follow the masses. Everybody wears jeans. I also want to wear a jean. Everybody is dating. I also want to date. Everybody is eating meat. I want to eat meat. Everybody is going to a temple. I want to go to a temple. Everybody finds eating pizza is fun. I also want to eat pizza and have fun. So we have defined our likes and dislikes based on everyone's likes and dislikes. Your connections, your families, your friends, right? Anyway, so the journey or a destiny is not a destination to achieve. It is a path. That constant integrated awareness is a path. You can embark on that path right now and be self-realized, and that definition of self-realization, that experience of self-realization will slowly become richer and richer and richer and richer, and it never ends. The day you get up and say, I am self-realized, you stopped realizing the self, because the self is Brahman. It's infinite. The capacity to expand is infinite. The day you say, I know, you stop knowing, because you've limited that knowledge to that point in your life. So it's a journey. Being in the journey is our goal. Being in that journey of self-exploration, of breaking through these conditions that I've acquired from birth, breaking those conditions one by one, exploring those conditions and saying, wait a minute, why am I so conditioned about this? Who conditioned me? Right? Rather than sitting and blaming this and that, I would ask myself, wait, can I look at it in a different manner? Can I look at myself in a different manner? And we'll come to that. And that journey is self-realization. So you can be at this moment, embark on this journey right at this moment, and you are self-realized. To the extent you have allowed yourself to be unconditioned. That's all it is. And the more you break the conditioned mindset, you break everything. Ultimately, you become non-judgmental. You become free of fear. You experience a source within you that is unending in its capacity to give. And all of that begins to flow through your thoughts. That experience flows through your thoughts, inspires your words, and they become your deeds. You want proof of concept? Look at Bhagavan Sri Satya Sai Baba. No other better proof of concept than that. What happens when when an individual basks in that glory of I am the Supreme Self. Anything and everything is possible. So jump on this bandwagon. What are you waiting for? And say, I am on this journey of self-realization, which never ends. Self-realization, therefore, is a journey. What else do we have? So how does love equip us in this practice of self-realization? Let's go to that slide straight away. This is what I talked about in the morning. I'm going to take a little more, we have some time. So I'm going to take a little more time to go into this a little more in detail. So you perhaps have talked about this because Bhagwan talks about this in many, in beautiful way. He talks about a house where the foundation is a self-confidence, then the walls are self-satisfaction, the roof is self-sacrifice, and living is self-realization. I like to see it in this manner simply because I just play with it. The concept is the same anyway. So let's take self-confidence, which to me, if it's a triangle, because at prema here, this is the product of all of this. Our incapability to love somebody else or even myself comes from this being incomplete. These concepts being unclear in my mind, in my heart, and I'm not able to apply that in my life, and therefore prema is not flowing through me. And that prema is that expansion of the heart, the ability to embrace people, the ability to go out fearlessly, to express yourself. And that fearless expression, what else it is? It is just love. Love in action, let me see if I get it right. Love in action is dharma, right? When your actions are born out of love, it is the right action. It can never be wrong. When you speak out of love, genuine love, fearless love, unconditioned, non-judgmental love, that is prema. So that is satya. Satya is an expression of love through your speech, through your thoughts. Non-violence is an expression of that love through your thoughts and feelings. Peace is an expression of that love through your emotions. So it is just love, basically. And that love, again, has the capacity to to help your consciousness grow further and further. And that love becomes the self. The self becomes God. So love becomes God. God becomes love. And that love is infinite in its capacity. That's my understanding. So what is confidence? Let's go to that. So my question to you all, for those of you who say, aha, I got that under my belt, I am confident, okay, I don't have that issue now. I want to ask you this question. What is the source of your confidence? What it is? What is it? Now, does your confidence come from the fact that you may be tall and good looking, or you're coming from a rich family perhaps, and you have a nice car to drive around? Does your confidence come from that? Or the lack of it? Are you lacking confidence because you perhaps don't have a height that your friends have? You don't have skin color? I guess, I don't know, because we're caught up into all of this, right? If you see that the world today is divided based on all these silly things. Color of the skin, the ability to talk and speak, and the status in your societies and all of that. So if your confidence comes from that, then I want to ask you one question. What if you didn't have that height? What if you were just dark skinned? What if you are not born to parents who couldn't afford anything? What if you were born in one remote village in India with barely any water, barely any school or education? What would you do? What would have happened to your confidence? Ask yourself that. We are blessed to not experience that. But what if we did experience something like that? Abject poverty. Would we have that basis? What is the basis then of self-confidence? You will have all the excuses to say why I'm not confident. right? Oh, poor thing. How can you expect confidence from that child? The child has grown up in a village. He's not been educated. He has nothing, we say, right? But that's proved wrong. By whom? None other than Bhagwan Baba. He was born in a village to very poor parents. Was he tall? No. With his hair, he came up to my height, and I'm not tall. Was he fair and all of that? Perhaps not. When he was growing up, you and I have seen and can still see many of those pictures. He was just like any other kid, right? But would you and I dare say he was not confident? Let's hold on to that thought. Because his confidence was not based on the physical self. It was not based on that. So let's hold that thought. Why? Because if your confidence is based on your physical self, hey, I won the Miss Universe, I'm good looking, and you're confident, what happens 10 years later? Or perhaps the next year? You may not be Miss Universe forever, right? The age takes over, and so we all know that the physical self is something that changes. What God forbid you get some illness or something, and the physical self changes drastically, then what happens? If we are leaning on this for confidence, it is okay, but then remember that it is a very temporary relief. It's like a drug that is given to you to temporarily relieve you of your pain, like an anesthesia, but it's not the permanent answer. And that confidence will be easily shaken. You cannot build a home with that foundation. So don't build your home on that foundation. Hey, I got muscles, man. I can do things. That's just this age, right? I've been there, done that. So we don't want to rely completely on this. We can rely on this. We can exploit it. But then we have to realize, hey, wait a minute. I have to rely on something which is more permanent. What about the mental self? What if you say, hey, listen, I am confident because I am educated. I have degrees. I have this talent. I can sing. I can speak. I can dance. I can do this. I can do that. I rely on my talents for confidence. Again, I'm relying on something that could be temporarily available. What if I can't sing? What if I can't speak? What if I stammer? What if you know where I'm going with this, right? So if I'm relying on my mental self based on my education, my talents, and so on and so forth, that is another crutch I'm leaning on. So I have a physical crutch on one side, I have a mental crutch, and I am living my life saying I am confident. The question is, will you build your home, your life based on this kind of confidences? And that is why when we don't have a talent, we feel either shy, or we feel nervous, or we say we don't have the confidence. We say we don't have the confidence. Confidence is shaken, right? Again, Bhagwan Baba, what kind of education did he have in that village growing up? He just went to these really tiny schools in 1940s, earlier, before 1940s, because by 1940 he threw this book and says, I'm done with this kind of education, right? But you guys don't get that idea. Anyway, so he had no education. Did that bother him? He started a university, which today is a pride in India. He started a university. Can you even comprehend that? How can somebody who is not educated sit? I was a witness to this. I never get tired of telling this. He sat with vice chancellors from all the universities, they on the floor and he on the chair, and he's talking to them about his vision of a university. And I'm scratching my head and saying, how is it even possible? How is it possible that these these highly educated, talented vice chancellors, many of them scientists, are listening to somebody who has not even passed 8th grade? Where did that confidence come from? We didn't have this. The Sai principle. The Sai principle is the spiritual self. We talked about awareness, right? Know who you are and then begin to live a life. I like that, rather than live your life, someday you will realize who you are. No, I don't like that. That's the bizarre world we have created. You have a chance to reverse that. Okay? All of us have a chance at any point, but it's easier when you're younger, right? Because you have a whole life ahead of you. The Sai principle, look at what Baba did 1940 when he began his mission. He first declared who he was. That awareness was laid out very clear in himself and for everyone. I am Sai, he said. I am Sai. I am Sai. What that Sai is, of course, we're going to spend a whole lifetime trying to understand. But in his mind, he was clear of that awareness. The little Satya became Sai. He first set out that. Awareness was there. And then he began to live out that Sai principle. So the Sai principle, to me, what I learned from Bhagwan's life, is the spiritual self. When we tap into that spiritual self, we get a glimpse of who we are. And that's good enough to jump into this bandwagon of true self-confidence. A building block is brought, but that building block is permanent. It's not going to shake forever. And then that you get more and more of those blocks slowly building a strong foundation because you're drawing inspiration from the spiritual self. A part of you that is still untapped to a large extent. Think about that. I'm not giving you answers. I'm just opening your minds to think. All right? So think about that. When the true confidence therefore comes from the spiritual self, and the self itself is infinite, and so the ability to gain confidence, the ability to have complete fearlessness, like Baba demonstrated when he was talking to hundreds and thousands of people, or when he would just walk into a group of scientists, or just invite a whole group of devotees who would come, whose language he wouldn't know in a physical sense. We are talking. I like to look at him in a physical form and like to draw inspiration from that. And that's how he continues to inspire me today. And I think every great avatar takes a human form to teach us all these lessons. That give me nothing and I'll build everything out of that nothing. Right? Jesus Christ, a son of carpenter. How will the son of carpenter today influence more than 1 billion people? How does somebody do that? Krishna, cowherd. His job was to take cattle out by the river Godavari and bring them back, go in the morning and come back in the evening. A cowherd, for crying out loud. How does that cowherd become the emperor of Dwaraka? How? These avatars come down and teach us. And Krishna was abused in childhood. He was separated from parents. His uncle was killing all his siblings, right? Jesus Christ, same story. His birth was not recorded. He was a nobody. So they had all excuses to be normal. Bhagwan Baba, born in a village, he had all excuses to be just another villager. And nobody would even question that. And yet with nothing, they built everything. Today Puttaparthi has an airport, has a railway station, has a highway, you know this. So why? Because he built that foundation of his mission in life from that awareness of the spiritual self. You don't have to realize the entire self. It's impossible because there is no such thing as the entire self. Brahman is infinite expansion. Just jump into that and continue to expand the definition of who the real I in you is. Take that and go step by step into that, right? So, self-confidence, self-satisfaction. Again, how can we practice? I like to call the one word contentment, self-sacrifice. Contentment appeals to me. It's just what I like. So self-sacrifice, contentment, I'm going to use them as synonyms in this particular presentation. How can we practice contentment? Let me go. Sealing on desires. You will be saying, oh gosh, not again, man. We have heard this 100 times. Sealing on desires is, I define it differently. Sealing on desires is not operating from the point of view of wanting. Remove the wanting principle in your life. That gives you a beggar mentality. I want this, I want that. It comes from a feeling of lack. When you desire something from a place of the lack of it, guess what? Your unconscious mind is going to register the lack of it and will keep you wanting forever. That is why that wanting, which we generally call desires, that wanting is what is going to keep you trapped in this poor me, I want this, I want that, and that wanting never ends. It becomes a disease, and addictive neural pathways are created in your brain to always keep wanting. And that never ends. Baba uses the word korikulu in Telugu for that. Korikulu means always wanting, 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 thirst for it. Trishna, not with a K but with a T. T as in Tom. Trishna. Trishna is that thirst. Oh, I want this, I want that, I want to do this, I want to do that. That kind of thirst, stop, because it comes from a place of a lack of it. And your focus, when you want something real bad, is your focus actually internally is the lack of it. And that lack of it is what materializes in your life. Think about it. Again, I don't have time, but think about it. But whereas contentment actually fuels growth. So contentment comes from the ability to enrich yourself. It comes from a place of, I have all of this. I have something, I want to enrich myself further. It comes from the place of deep satisfaction, and that builds positivity. Okay? Think about that. The Sai principle, therefore, is being, not becoming. Be content with who you are. Be content at this moment with what you're capable of doing. Be content. Don't say, I want to become like this one, I want to become like that one, and don't allow somebody to tell you, become like this one, become like that one. It's a wrong idea. Because you and I, we are all very, very, very unique. We are one, just one in this planet. There's no one else like you. There's no one else like you. Then why do you want to become like somebody else? Why do you want to copy somebody else? Why can't you just be? We cannot be because we are not understood what this being is. We are taught to become. From our birth, we are taught to become. Right? And we just like sponge, like I said, we got this sheep mentality. We just following, everybody is doing it, I also want to do it. Everybody is getting a job, I have to get a job. Everybody is getting married, I have to get married. I spoke to some youngster recently, we were corresponding, and this person said, I'm not happy, I'm not happy, everybody around me is getting married and having children, but I can't live that life. I said, why are you comparing your life with somebody else? And that person didn't like it because he says, no, I'm not trying to become like somebody else, I just want to be happy like everyone else. But that's the whole point. Everybody is having children and they're married, I also want to do, because you think that by doing what they are doing, somehow I'm going to find that happiness, which I think they are. Perhaps I may be right, I may be wrong, right? We live our lives trying to become like somebody else. How about just being first? And in that being, we get a chance to explore, wait a minute, who am I? What do I think is my purpose? Why do I exist on this planet? What can I do with my existence? So, Sai principle is being, not becoming. Baba adopted a Afro hairstyle. He was flashy in his robes. Unlike a spiritual saint who would normally have beards and turbans and all of that, he adopted a very different approach. And he said, I am Sai. Can you believe that? How unique is that? Where does that come from? It comes from the ability to be, not become. All right. The last one, self-sacrifice. What is the quality of your ability to give? What is the quality? I'll stop with that. I don't think we have time for silent sitting, but I'll just finish these thoughts. We did an activity in the morning, just a few minutes of kind of grasping all of this, but we'll see. What is the quality of our giving? I'm not talking of charity. Baba talks of this word, sacrifice, and uses a very nice quote. Na prajaya, I always miss it. Anyway, he says it's not action, it's not wealth, it's not progeny, it's sacrifice alone that gives you immortality. Tyage neke amrtatva manasu. Tyage. Only tyaga takes you there. Sacrifice. Sacrifice is giving a part of what you like, what you love. Charity would be, I have excess of it and therefore I want to give. There is a big difference between the two. I really don't have time, and if that I can take that time which I value so much in my life, I can take that time to do something for somebody else, that is sacrifice. If I have all the time in the world and I say, I have nothing else to do, man, I'll come with you guys and do what you're doing, that becomes charity. Ask yourself, and that applies to money, and that applies to your talents, that applies to everything else. Am I sacrificing, or am I just being charitable? It is sacrifice that comes out of that sense of contentment. I want to share. And the more richer I feel that this talent is helping me, the more I want to give. Soulful giving. Am I giving it with a soul, or am I just doing it for the sake of doing it? Baba says a beautiful quote there. Duty, if you do your duty, without love is deplorable. Duty with love is desirable. Love without duty is divine. When your actions are born out of love, not because it's your duty, not because I'm part of this group, man, I have to do this, all right, I want to fit in, so I'll also, how can I say no to this and that, and you're somehow doing it, then all that becomes duty without love, duty with love. But when you jump into it, not because it's your duty, but because it's love that is driving you to do it, love for yourself, love for the community, love for the planet, love for this earth, and there is a love that's behind it, then it becomes divine. Then your giving becomes soulful. We donated clothes once, and we gave our old clothes for a group of flood victims. And Baba called us later and said, why are you giving old clothes to people who have lost everything in their lives? Won't they look at your old clothes, your stupid bunions and underwears and your old pants, and won't they get even more depressed? When they are already suffering from lack of everything, shouldn't you be giving your new clothes to them? Have we thought of that? That is soulful giving. That was what I learned from him. When he would give the very best. Whether it was a discourse or a darshan or a gift, he would give the very best, very best. He would never compromise on giving. Soulful giving. That becomes sacrifice. So what is the Sai principle? He gave us this wonderful path, selfless service. Not what I get out of it. No. What can I bring into it? How can I enrich somebody else's life? I don't care what he thinks about me, what anyone thinks about me, what I am getting out of it. I am not interested in the I and me in this. At this moment, that person in front of me is most important. How can I do my very best for that person? It ties into soulful giving, selfless service. So you apply these Sai principles in self-confidence, where you tap into the spiritual self. You apply the Sai principle in self-satisfaction by being, not becoming, and you apply the spirit or the Sai principle of selfless service, not as projects alone, but it becomes your very nature. That's what it is. Like I always, humorously say, when you look for a parking spot, why don't you choose the one that is further away from the store and allow a parking spot that is perhaps very tempting to park near the store for somebody else who might need it? Why don't you do that? Why? Because then that becomes a sacrifice. Why don't we do that? Because we say, oh, Swami's grace, I got it so close to the store, where you can actually afford to walk another 10 feet or 50 yards. Maybe there's an older person who would be equally feeling blessed if they got that spot, right? Think about that. So self-sacrifice, the soulful idea of giving becomes your true nature. I'm working on it, right? I'm not preaching. Please don't think I perfected any of this. These are lessons that inspire me. These are the things that guide me, and I'm just sharing things that I am exploring. And small little acts begin to the mistakes I make. I say, wait a minute. Why did I grab that parking spot? What if somebody else wants it more? If somebody else wants to overtake me, why can't I let that person go? Who knows what that urgency in that person's life is, right? So when I'm driving on the road, rather than cursing him and say, how dare he cut me and all that, just say, I don't know, maybe he needs to go somewhere. God speed and God be with him. So let him go. Soulful giving. So, my dear young brothers, sisters, thank you so much for your time. I know I went very fast. I get very engrossed when I talk about this, because these are very fundamental things of life, life lessons, if you will. This is not a philosophy. I don't think spirituality is a matter of choice. I don't believe it's a matter of convenience. It is fundamental to our very existence. And by spirituality, I'm not talking about attending bhajans and doing that. That's all one part of it. Those practices are expressions of this yearning, and that's okay. But the fundamental understanding of who I am, why am I here, how can I enrich my life? Is there a source that I can tap into that is unending in its capacity to give, to bless, to heal? And can I be an instrument of that source? And therefore, I can raise consciousness of everyone else and share. Hey, listen, we all have this great treasure. That's why I find it very, very close and dear to my heart. So thank you all for giving me this opportunity to share these thoughts. I know we ran out of time, but think about these, and hopefully you have some points that you can take home. Again, thank you all.